All right. Welcome back to Views with Hughes, your Jennifer News. This is Jerome Hughes. And if you haven't done so already, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel, click the bell notification so that way you'll be notified of future uploads and updates. So today, I'm going to be talking about the recent updates with the WGA strikes where there's no negotiations. Okay. So I'm going to do something I haven't done in a while, share the deadline article. But as I've stated before, for those of you who see me from the community tab on my channel, I got a special guest with me. That special guest is none other than the Hollywood writer and extraordinaire himself, Kamran Pasha. Cameron, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's an honor to be on your channel. I was saying before we went on live here that we've interacted a bit on my Patreon, and we've interacted a bit online, and it's just delightful to finally get to speak with you directly and to talk to your audience.
I'm glad to have you here as well. Also, Cameron, I want to thank you for like sharing with us the different updates from like with Sparrow and everything. And I've
Mhm.
also gave you shared those stories on my channel too, and I gave you credit as well for it. So that way it won't seem like Sparrow's talking to me. And plus, if I had a scooper and everything, I may have to take some time trying to get used to sharing the info out there in a manner where I can make people realize it's rumor. It's not truth. It's rumor. It hasn't been confirmed yet. Maybe confirmed a few months or a year now, but it's not. It's just rumor. All right. Okay.
Sure.
So let's go ahead and jump right on into this right quick. I do want to ask you a few questions before I start sharing with the deadline article. Okay.
Yes,
Now,
please.
first and foremost, can you please provide an overview of the main issues that led to this current WGA strike?
Sure. It's a very complex situation, but I'll try to get it down to some of the basic issues. The last strike that I participated in, because I've been a member of the Writers Guild since 2001, right?
Yep.
And so I participated in the last strike. I was actually working on a TV show on NBC on Bionic Woman as a producer, and so I had to walk away from that job. That job didn't exist when the strike was over. That was 2007, 2008. So I lost a job. As a result of that strike, I participated. I was very passionate about it. Years later, I began get more information as to the events happening around that strike that maybe question maybe my support wasn't that fully informed at the time, but whatever, that's a learning process. And so now here we are in 2023, so 15 years later, and or really 16 years later, and so we have a new strike, right? And we have two strikes. There's a Writers Guild and a Screen Actors Guild. I can talk a little bit about the Screen Actors Guild. I'm less familiar with their issues. I've talked to actor friends and gotten a sense of it, but I can certainly talk about the Writers Guild issues. So, the Writers Guild went on strike. Started on May 2nd. We are now approaching we're certainly well over 90 days. We're approaching 100 days of the strike of writers not working with the studios. In the last strike in 2007, 2008, it ended in exactly 100 days. And that was the milestone that everyone was hoping it wouldn't go longer than that, because there's like a psychological milestone to that, right? And
Mhm.
now it looks like, sadly, negotiations have been stalled. There was some movement, at least try to talk on Friday, which has very ambiguous outcome, which we'll talk about later. I mean, a lot of people are pretending that it's all collapsed. It hasn't collapsed. It's just very ambiguous right now. But what is clear is that the talks aren't really being engaged. So we're obviously very likely to go past 100 days. August 9th is just middle of this week, right? It's coming up. And so it's unlikely. I pray on Monday we get a word the strike's been resolved, but that's improbable if we're not talking, right? So we'll see. But strikes are always ultimately about money, or at least they should be, right? And so the you know it, one of the major issues that are real strike worthy issues is that the last several years, we've had mass inflation. And so even normally, basically every 2 to 3 years, the Writers Guild has a contract the last 2 to 3 years, and then we negotiate with the studios to up the minimum rates, because the purpose of the guild is to establish minimum rates, right? Of how much, if you're hired on a TV show or sell a movie. For example, I was approached before the strike with a movie where somebody wanted to buy a small horror movie I wrote for $30,000, and I said, well, as a member of the Writers Guild, that's actually that's a little low, because even on a small budget movie like this, which was about a $2 million budget for a horror movie, the minimum is about $50,000, and that's the minimum. So that's there to protect, give you a floor, right?
Right.
There's no ceiling. Somebody wants to pay me $50 million for a movie, no one's going to stop it, right? And so that there's a floor there to essentially protect guild members with minimum rates. That includes minimum rates and how much they're paid when they're working on a TV show, etc. And so one of the concerns, fair concern, really, is that inflation of the last 3 to 4 years, really the last 3 years since the lockdowns began, has become so egregious that it is that the old get a 2% 3% raise isn't covering inflation when inflation is larger than that, right? I go out shopping, I take care of my mother, we go out shopping, and she's shocked. She's shocked when she's looking at the grocery store. She's like, how did our grocery store bills go from, let's say 500 a month to 800 a month to 900 a month? It's the same stuff we're always buying, right? And so that's a real thing in people's lives. And so, that is one of the issues, is trying to get the rates there. But there's been other structural issues about how the industry has changed, that are beyond inflation and things like that, which is, we've had since 2000, when 2008 the strike happened. There's a lot of people misremember it. I was there. The people think that the strike in 2008 was about getting us the coverage for the internet, right? That for Netflix shows and things like that. Make sure Netflix is a member that has to work with Guild. That wasn't really a thing at 2008. The only thing that was even on the horizon was Hulu, which was beginning. Netflix was still just it was competing with Blockbuster for renting you DVDs, right? I mean, that wasn't a phenomenon. And so and we very early on, my understanding is very early on in the negotiation with the studios, they said, yeah, we'll let you cover internet, because at the time nobody imagined that internet would become this massive source. The streaming was a thing, although some people had that vision of it, but people thought that's 50 years away. I wasn't sure it's 50 years away. It turned out to be 10 years away, right? And now
Right.
streaming has become a major phenomenon. Streaming has become a major phenomenon. So the major issue with streaming, and now the streaming, and you've got Apple Plus TV, you've got Netflix, all of these places like Disney,
Yep.
Paramount, they all have their streaming networks. Most of them not profitable, because they're all, they didn't think out their streaming model, and now they're facing the consequences of that. Only Sony was smart to say, we don't need a streaming service. We'll just license our movies and shows out and make money on that. They were the only smart ones, right? The guys who did Ghostbusters, and so they understand their market, and so so Sony stayed out of it. It's wisely, and apparently Sony is one of the people that's trying to push for a resolution, because they're old school traditional economics studio. They're trying to push for a resolution strike. But the big issue with streaming is this. So one of the things that's central that we won back in the strike that was in 1960, we're talking about 50 years ago, right?
Yeah.
The strike was held then. We essentially won the rights to what are called residuals, but they're essentially royalties. Artists. People say, well, why do you need royalties? Someone once said to me, a plumber doesn't get extra money every time you flush the toilet. So I was like, with all due respect to plumbers who are right now, plumbers making more money than screenwriters. They're doing quite well for themselves. All the screenwriters have no money, right? With all due respect to any craft, my accountant once said that to me, and now with all due respect to accounting, I have an MBA, right? There, all those tasks and jobs are critical and important and deserve to be well compensated. There's something different about being an artist. You're creating from scratch. You're creating from scratch. You're doing something that is unique. That's usually not fungible. Like there are a lot of excellent plumbers that can do the work, right? Not everyone can be Ryan Gosling. I mean, not everyone can be Margot Robbie. Not everyone can play things. It's a unique thing, and not everyone can write the best scripts. I mean, there's incredible writers out there that are unique, and so history has always had artists get royalties, or at least in novels, and I'm a novelist as well, so I get royalties from my novels when people buy them. I got
Yep.
upfront advance when I sold my novels to Simon & Schuster, but I also have a royalty statement as people buy them. It's true for playwrights. Playwrights get royalties when you put up their plays, right? And so screenwriters weren't getting royalties initially. They were brought in essentially as work for hire, and back in 1960 or so, they struck and said, no, we deserve royalties too, because otherwise we can't stay in this business. And that's the purpose of a royalty for an artist. Is I've been in this industry 22 years. Most of that journey, Jerome, has been not working. I've had some years of great success, but they're often followed by 2 or 3 years of nothing, right? And so that's normal. That's successful writers have 2 to 3 year periods where they're not working, just because it's the luck of the draw. You didn't get a gig, and gigs are arbitrary, and everyone hires their buddies and whatever. It's all, and so there's the chaos there. And during much of my journey, I've often, when I haven't scrabbled together some gig to keep me going, a residual check will show up, and it'll be just enough to pay my rent. And so it keeps me going, right? It's kept me going until the next break comes. And that's been my journey. Now, what happened with the streaming services is that they essentially said, look, the royalty old residual system doesn't work because the old system is based on how many, like I said, Sony will sell a TV show, it'll get a rating saying how many people are watching it, right? It sells it worldwide, and the more people are watching the show, the bigger your residuals are. And so that's a traditional system. But streamers, they don't want you to know how many people watch the show. Right? They keep that secret. Netflix keeps it secret. Apple keeps it secret, right? They don't reveal that. They reveal what they want to tell you. They'll tell you that Wednesday was the number one watch show on Netflix for this period of time, but you have no basis to confirm that. You don't know when they say it's the number one watch show, and I loved Wednesday, but when they say is that did people watch it? Was it for 5 minutes, for 1 minute, for an hour? What do they watch, right? We don't know. Did they watch it for 30 seconds and get bored and shut it off? Is that counted? We don't know. So we don't know if that's successful. We just have to take the word for it. And because they won't share that data, there's no way to really know residuals. And so the way that the Netflix of the world said, we'll just pay a little bit more upfront, and you're not going to get residuals. We're going to buy our residuals because we don't want to deal with that, right? And when Netflix was rich, when it was living off all that Wall Street money, right, and loans, I had friends of mine who were, I had a friend of mine who was working as a showrunner of a Netflix show. Normally, as a showrunner, she might make $300,000 a year, on like a cable show, maybe 400,000, right? She was making over $1 million on this Netflix show, because they get paid her up front. Like, don't worry about residuals. Here's just a lump sum payment. And that's great. It's better. And that sounds great. But then Netflix, as you may know, last couple of years has not been doing very well. So all that's going down, right? So back to the old numbers, but now you don't have residuals. So you don't have,
because of the fact that we've seen, sorry to cut you off, but we see that like a number of people out there who are customers, consumers and everything, OG fans of the past IPs, like Masters of the Universe, for example. The show was called Masters, not He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. That was their giveaway right there. And then we saw the lead, and I forgot his name. I think he's one of the executives, or if not the CEO of Netflix, who just basically put out there the intentions of the show. That's when the fans started saying, wait a minute, he's the one that's controlling these things, not Kevin Smith. Okay. Right. And the crazy part about that, excuse me, is that, a lot of people are starting to question like the things of motives of, Netflix. They don't like Masters of the Universe, but they do like on Wednesday. They don't. And it's also like starting to lose a few fans of Stranger Things and everything. But that's right there. It's a different story. But you did bring up a good point about residuals and everything. And it reminded me about was one of my subscribers informed me about on my channel, where there are those who are millionaires who are actors and actresses for for example, the SAG-AFTRA, but then again, or not just the actors, but also those who are writers under the WGA who are making like a lot of money. But then there's also those who are also writers that are struggling. Yes. So
most artists are struggling. Most of us are. Yeah. Most writers are struggling. Most actors are struggling, right? And so very few people are making Arnold Schwarzenegger money or Brad Pitt money, right? Very, very few people are making the money that that Ryan Murphy, who creates shows like American Horror Stories, worth a couple $100 million. Very few people are doing that, right? So yeah, those people aren't as impacted by residuals. That's just pennies to them. Whereas for the rest of us, it keeps it's pivotal, right? And so because of the streaming system, residuals have gone down. I've actually been a little bit blessed because I actually haven't really worked for a streamer so far. I actually hope once the strike is over, I can get some stream work. There's a lot of good shows on streamers, but I've actually worked on traditional media for the most part. I've worked on Showtime. I've worked on the, I've worked at networks like NBC, CW. I've done a lot of stuff. And so they're still following that traditional model. So I still get decent residuals. I get, maybe every quarter, maybe over the course of a quarter, it maybe altogether about $2,000-3,000, which again that's a month's rent, right?
And
That'll keep me going.
that includes things that you wrote that were being released on
I include
digital,
oh,
DVD, so on
Oh
and
yeah,
so
yeah,
forth.
that includes everything. I'm still getting good residuals from my show Sleeper Cell that I did in 2005, and often and they list on the check what it's the residuals for. So it's like, oh, this is for downloads. Like people are still downloading Sleeper Cell on Amazon, right? And every time you download
Yep.
Sleeper Cell on Amazon, I get some money for that, right? And so and that was what actually we fought for in 2008 was downloads. It wasn't streaming. It was to get money, and I'm still getting like from 2005. I'm still getting decent residuals, like stuff that'll pay my bills from this show,
Hmm.
right? Because people, thank God, are still downloading it in 2023. It's a good show, right? And they're still
Yep.
watching it. And so it's like 24. People watch 24 still, right? And so that's the thing. So yeah, that's the issue that I care about the most. That's the issue that most working writers care about the
Yep.
most, right? That's the number one issue is royalties and residuals. That's the number one issue. The other issue that it needs to be addressed. I actually have a opinion that might be in the minority in this. I'll express it. But the other issue that needs to be addressed is artificial intelligence and what's the role of artificial intelligence in Hollywood, right? AI. Obviously, the actors are very nervous about it. And I think and now I'm going to say my controversial statement. I looked, I'm a former attorney. I'm not a practicing attorney anymore, but I'm a former attorney.
Yeah.
And I looked over the language that was presented by the studios, the compromise language before we went on strike. And I looked it over. A friend of mine also looked it over. It was, business, affairs guy. And they said, yeah, this language will work. The language basically, the major concern for most of us writers is that, you don't have studios having AI write a script and then not paying a writer to do it. In
Yeah.
reality, is AI is never, ever, ever going to be able to create something new. It can copy Casablanca, right? But it can't create a new Casablanca, right? It can't do that. It can only replicate what exists, often in a very silly fashion, right? Because I think AI
Yep.
in some ways is devolving. I think it's getting dumber. I think it's getting dumber with more information. It's not getting smarter. It's just like with the internet. The more people on the internet, the dumber people are becoming, right? So AI is the same way, right? So it's not advancing. And so but I personally thought that the language that was presented to us, that in our back and forth before the strike, it works. I mean, I think the pivotal issue, my understanding is the language that they were willing to offer essentially says that that every project has to have accredited Writers Guild human member as the script. So, if any executive is dumb enough to have AI write like a first draft of a script, it'll be garbage. And it's just like, and then you give it to somebody, says rewrite this. Well, you're still gonna have to be, that's not an official, that's not a first draft. That's like notes. It's not real. And so the first person, the first screenwriter who has to clean that up is getting should be getting a normal screenwriting credit rather than a rewrite credit, because you're not rewriting something that's not human, right? And so I think we
Right.
already have language, or it's in the right direction. So I'm not as concerned. I think the actors have very real concerns about that on AI, because I do think that, at least as I understand the proposal that was made by the AMPTP, the studios organization, to the actors, I do think is unacceptable. There were things like being able to essentially digitize extras and background workers, and use their images forever. Like every time you want a crowd in a movie, you just pull up the standard background scan that you did, have AI, change this, make them taller, change their race, whatever. But it's the same face structure. You use that person, but they're not getting any money for it. But so you use them as the basis for further art, and they're not getting paid for it. I think that's wrong. I think to me it's self-evidently wrong. I think most people can see that. So you're using my face, but I don't. You pay me once a few bucks, and then you use it for the next 400 years. No, I don't think so, right? And I don't think that's right. And hopefully actors will get the resolution, because I don't think that can stand. I mean, it's crazy. But we don't have the same problem with the writers. I think ultimately AI is going to get resolved. I think unfortunately a lot of younger writers have been frightened by AI. But the reality is I'm not frightened by it. I don't see AI will never be a creative source of anything. And I mean I don't like using it. I played with it. I've had some fun with it, but I don't like using it. I don't plan to use it on any show or movie I work on ever as a
Yeah.
showrunner. No.
And a lot of people saw that from Secret Invasion, as I say a
Mhm.
lot of people because I didn't watch, the show. Yeah, I
Yeah,
canceled my Disney Plus subscription like during season 3 of Mandalorian. Okay,
sure. Okay.
but other than that, That does leads me to my next question about Zachary Levi. Okay, now he did
Yes.
share in an interview with Deadline where he stated that he has a bone to pick with about restrictions that doesn't allow actors to go ahead and talk about their past work during the SAG after strike.
Yes.
And then he caught like a big backlash, I think, from people on social media as well as celebrities alike. So then he just later on clarified his or tried to clarify his comments where he said that he claimed that to be taken out of context. And he said, and I quote, "It's come to my attention that an offhand remark I made in just last weekend is being taken out of context." Now, she says, so let me be very clear. I support my union, the WGA, and the strike. I remain an outspoken critic of the exploitative system that us artists are subject to working since I started my journey in this business 25 years ago. The strike is necessary to protect ourselves, our writers, and all those working in production who made the
Mhm.
industry move. Now, those words sound all good and hunky dory and lovey dovey and everything, where it does try to attempt to make him, look good in the spotlight as well as to actually show how he's the innocent one. So, I asked you from like an analytical standpoint, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts about his clarification and from that kind of analytical standpoint, what do you think he should have done differently if he could have?
Well, so let me just clarify exactly what the situation he's referring to, which is
Mm-hmm.
that SAG. Now we're talking about SAG after with the actors. I'm not an actor. I've taken acting classes, but I'm not an actor. It's like I'm not a doctor. I play one on TV, whatever that kind of thing, right? Remember
Yep.
that old commercials from the '80s? '80s had the best everything, including commercials. But the issue of SAG after is that in any strike they want to maximize their leverage, and so their leverage for actors is their public appearance, right, and their
Right.
promotion of films, right, and so that if you got nobody showing up at the red carpet to talk about a movie, people aren't aware of it, or they're less aware of it, and they may not be excited to watch it, and
Yeah.
so as a result, SAG after placed a restriction on its members that during the strike you are unable to promote anything you're doing that's owned by one of the striking companies, like movie studio or a TV show that you worked on. There's a lot of TV shows that are already shot and the episodes are going to come out. You can't do any interviews about it. You can't go. I went to see a wonderful indie film a couple of weeks ago here in LA. It was a really, really wonderful film called War Pony, which I hope people will see. It's in very limited release. Hopefully, it'll come out on DVD. And the co-director of the movie was Elvis's granddaughter, who was an incredible Riley Keough, who is an incredible actress, and she's now an incredible director. It's one of the most amazing. It's a movie about life on a Native American reservation today with young kids, and I was blown away by it. And I be honest, I was part of the special screening was there, the cast was going to be there, and Riley was going to be there. Riley backed out at the last minute, right? Because she actually
Oh.
showed up. She showed up to say hello to fans like outside the theater and sign autographs, but she wouldn't go inside to promote the movie, which I think is kind of tragic. It's a small indie film that I think people need to see. And had Riley Keough been on stage, I think Variety and others would have covered it, and it would have gotten more attention. Whatever, but that's the thing. So the actors are being told. So there is the critique that this kind of restriction with no exceptions. We're going to talk about how SAG is giving exceptions to productions, but this kind of promotion thing with no exceptions is hurting independent films like that people would want to know about, right? It's not hurting the studios. Studios don't care if you don't go watch this indie film. They care if you don't watch Barbie. They care if you don't watch Oppenheimer, right? They don't care about this, and so why shouldn't this be given exception? Whatever, it wasn't. But now the next level of that is where he was speaking of, which is that you can't even talk about past stuff. So you can't be doing interviews talking about the movie you made 5 years ago or the show you were doing 15 years ago, right? To me,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a little bit silly, and also what it does, it impacts a lot of actors who are no longer stars who had a moment years ago, and they're still getting some money off that moment. For perfect example, for us in the fandom, the comic cons, right? The comic, all these various conventions, we have actors from the great '80s science fiction shows, right, showing
Yeah.
up, showing up and doing and this is they do this is a source of income for them. These people haven't worked. Some of them haven't worked in 20, 30 years, right? You
So
got
you
people from
think
Buck
he
Rogers showing up, and now they can't go do those things. Yeah, and like, how's that affecting? How's not being able to promote, talk on a panel about Buck Rogers from 1981? How's that affecting anything? But that's the rule.
so you think that there's nothing else he could have done and everything besides just keeping his mouth shut?
Well, I think, can I be honest? I mean, I can't speak for his intention, but certainly it wouldn't surprise me if some actors made comments
Mhm.
to get a message to the SAG to, hey, maybe this is not right, and then of course they get a backlash and then they backtrack, right? I think
Yeah.
a few people have done things like Stephen Amell from Arrow did that, right? He came out seemingly against a strike. He got massively lambasted on the internet, and then he apologized. Said, "I again." They all say it was off the cuff, misunderstood, blah blah blah.
A
I
lot of people
I
said that he
think
was forced to apologize.
well, they all were forced to apologize. The pressure of social media and the pressure of your own guild members, right?
Yep.
I have a friend of mine, and we'll go back talk about the writers, but and we'll talk about the issues that I don't support in the strike, and we could talk about that because and I don't care because a friend of mine finally, when it seems the strike is still going on and we're stuck over one issue, which is we'll call the minimum room staffing proposal that the Writers Guild has been pushing, right? Which the
Right.
studios have said is a non-starter. I kind of think it's a non-starter for me as a showrunner, but whatever. And so on Friday, when it looked like the restarted talks between the Writers Guild and the studios stalled over this thing again. One of my very good friends, very, very successful writer, God bless him. He's a very diplomatic guy, doesn't like confrontation. He got upset and he put out a tweet on Friday saying, we need to have a conversation about this demand that I think a lot of people don't support. And if the strike is continuing over this demand, maybe the membership needs to talk about this. And poor guy was lambasted. This guy's a loyal Writers Guild member, beloved by both other writers and fans. And he was attacked left and right by other writers, and was being sent messages saying, hey, you delete this, man, it undermines our leverage, it undermines the guild unity, blah blah blah. And and he
Yeah.
did. But I think he was very hurt by it because, look, I'm just trying to get dialogue here. I'm just trying to get dialogue. I can't have any dialogue. So that's where we are, right? So let's talk about some of the things that are controversial, right? So I've talked about things I support: better residuals, getting the AI stuff cleaned up, all that stuff. There's other issues I support figuring out because you often have things where you have situations right now because of the way streamers work. Again, it's different. If I work on a network show, there's a specific schedule. They hire me, let's say in May or June. Let's say in June, they hire me in June, and the network show. We immediately get working with our writers team, and then we have scripts ready, and then basically by early fall, we're talking about late August, early September. By that time, the show's in production with some scripts, right? And it's out, and within a few weeks it's on the air. And that's the thing is you as a writer and as a producer, you're managing that whole process. And then by like May of next year, that's over. If the show's renewed, you come back. If it's not renewed or you're not offered back, you don't, right? But there's a time frame. Whereas on the streamers, you could be called in tomorrow to film something, and you can write a bunch of scripts for them, but they don't film for another year, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they might start filming a year from now. So what's going to happen with you if are you able to get another job in that year while you're waiting for this thing to film? And for a lot of people, if they're being held on contract, no, you're still working for the show, and we need you on set when we start filming in 8 months. What are you doing those 8 months? I can't make other money. How am I going to survive? Right? I mean, suddenly the money that you gave me now has to last 2 years to get through the time frame. So that's a real issue we got to address. That's real, right? I mean, that's like, okay, you just halved my income because I can't get other work while you're not letting me go because you're not filming yet. It's not my problem, right? It's your choice, right? So that's a problem. And then the other issue is what are called mini rooms. I've worked in one mini room where basically that's the thing where you get paid less than you would normally get on a TV show. Because you're only being brought in to write a few scripts, then they may or may not ever film those, right? They're almost like it's like experimental. Let's treat it. So if we like the scripts, we'll think about filming it. So suddenly, you're working for 6 months, and the show never goes into production, and you've made less money than if you had been working on a TV show that was in production during those 6 months. So suddenly, those 6 months of your life are gone with less money. That's a real issue, right? So those are all real issues that we need to address. 100%. There's an issue that I'm very passionately against. I've been public about it. Nobody cares what I think, but I've been public about it. So I'm not afraid to talk on your channel about it because I've been criticizing it from the beginning, which is that one of the demands that our leadership has placed, which I do not support, is that what's called this minimum staffing, where it basically said, in order to address a lot of these economic concerns and that there's few, a lot of, with all the stuff happening, not a lot of writers are making the same amount of money. they're essentially wanting that the studios guarantee the number of writers on every show, right? Whereas
Mhm.
that so I've worked on shows with as few as 2 or 3 writers. I worked on shows with as over a dozen. Bionic Woman was over a dozen writers. Every show is different based on the needs of the situation, right? There are showrunners out there that just want to write by themselves, like that show Vikings. He just writes everything himself, right? He wrote every episode himself, right? I mean, and he doesn't
Yeah.
want to work with anybody else, right? And on West Wing, there was that situation where he had a bunch of writers sitting there not doing anything, because he's off writing all the West Wing episodes himself, Aaron Sorkin, right? And so he doesn't want to staff, and that's a creative choice. Like the thing is, writers are weirdos, they're artists. A lot of them are socially dysfunctional. They don't know how to deal with people. They're strange people, right? I know I'm one of them. And most of them don't have social skills, so they don't even know how to interact with a group of people. They don't know how to lead it. So some of the more dysfunctional but genius writers are like, you know what? I don't want a writer's room. I don't want. Maybe I'll have one friend of mine help me that I trust, but I don't know how to deal with 6 people in this room. I don't know how to manage it. I've worked with people that clearly did not know how to manage a writer's room and shouldn't have had one, right? Because they just made things worse. They didn't know how to, they disrespected people. They didn't know how to work with them. So they should be working by themselves. So what the Writers Guild is insisting, no. The studio is going to, right now the proposal is kind of crazy. It's like for an 8-episode show, which is now becoming the standard on like cable, like 8 episodes. It used to be 13, then it became 10, now it's 8. So you see the numbers are getting less money, right? So now 8-episode show, they're demanding you get 6 or 7 writers guaranteed. I'm working on a project right now that at least, I handed in episode 2 of the show to the network the day before the strike began, right?
Yeah.
And God willing, the strike ends, we can move that project forward. But they haven't given me an exact episode. They wanted me to write a couple of episodes and write a Bible for the series. And they determined, do we give you 8 episodes? Do we give you 10 episodes? Do we give you 6 episodes? They haven't told me yet, right? So if they gave me 8 episodes on this, God willing, I get my show, but they gave me 8 episodes. I have a group of writers that I want to hire for this show. I've identified them. They're good friends of mine. I think they can write this show and help me. That's about 3 people, 4 people, right, to write an episode show.
Yeah.
I don't need 6 or 7 people. So what am I going to do with those 3 other people? And this is like, remember, each of those 2 or 3 other people they want to guaranteed have a job on your show. They're talking about salary for that period of 100,000, 200,000 per person. Looking at a few $100,000 for somebody you never wanted to hire that you don't feel you need. I mean, that's kind of an extreme ask for anybody. It's an extreme ask for the studios to shell out $500,000 for writers that maybe the showrunner doesn't want. And it's an extreme ask for a showrunner saying, okay, I've got my 3 people that I want to work on this small show with. Now you're telling me to hire 2 more people that I don't know, I haven't worked with, I don't necessarily trust. We're living in a world right now where, there's young kids sitting in the writer's room, oh, you said something that offended me, I'm going to put it out on Twitter and ruin reputation, right? We're living in that world where showrunners are terrified of this young generation of kids who they don't really know very well, who are ready to be offended by everything and then put it out in the public, right? You made an off-color joke in the writer's room, right? You remember that incident that happened on Star Trek Discovery with that famous African-American playwright? You remember that incident? Yeah. So he was sitting in there. He's a playwright, very respected man, brought in Star Trek Discovery, and he told a story in the writer's room about how he had once been pulled over and the N-word had been used on him by a police officer. Like an offensive thing, a heartbreaking thing that had happened to him, and he was shocked by it. He told his story of how he had been hurt by this, and that this kind of stuff still happens today, right? Mm-hmm. Some kid in the writer's room said, I used the N-word in the writer's room. It's a black man talking about his experience. He used it, right? So they complained to HR, and HR called and said, you can't be using that word. What do you mean I can't be using that word? I'm a black man talking about that word being used as a slur against me. I can't be doing that. He got so angry that he was humiliated by HR, by some kid who had a axe to grind, right? Political axe to grind. He left the show. So the show lost a top African-American playwright, right? That's the kind of thing people are afraid of. So if I got to hire 2 more people, I'm like, am I going to get one of these guys? Do I have to, am I going to be in front of HR every 5 minutes because they didn't like something I said where I'm trying to explain how the sexual dynamics of a 15th century harem work, right? And so that's a demand I don't support. Honestly, a great many writers do not, especially showrunners, do not support it because for the reason I've explained, but they're all afraid to say it publicly. Like what happened to my friend. My friend said, we need to, because we're hearing that the strike is over this issue now. Well, I don't want this thing. I don't want this thing. I don't want them to give it to us. I don't want it, right? So why are you striking over this? Strike over residuals, strike over this stuff. Well, what are you striking over this for? But we can't talk about it because it's a code of omerta, because unfortunately the Writers Guild leadership has adopted this. And sadly, a lot of the young kids, like some of the people I'm mentoring, to them, this is their break finally. If you force the show to hire them, this is their break. But I'm like, this is not your break. It's not your break, because if someone has to forcibly hire you, they don't want you there, and you're not going to be given any real work. Your career is going to stall, right? It's what I've experienced. Now, we're both minorities. It's what I've experienced on, they have the diversity slot job on every writer show, where basically the studio says, yeah, you can hire, one, minority onto the show. We'll pay for it. It won't come out of the studio's budget. It's there to promote diversity. Every single show that I've worked on that has had a diversity slot writer, and frankly, they're always young Black writers. They're never like Latinos or Asians or anybody. It's always a young Black writer. They bring them in. That person is disrespected by the other writers, because they're seen as you couldn't do it on your own. You have to be brought in for this job. They're never given real work, and they never advance. It's exactly what Malcolm X warned about in the 60s, that a lot of these affirmative action things are just efforts by people to find project racism in a new way, right? And now they feel like, oh, I gave you a job, you should just be happy, right? And each one of those kids I've told, like, look, I believe in you. I want to give you opportunities, right? These guys don't. That's why they come to me complain, like, I don't feel like I'm being respected on the show. I'm like, you're not being respected on the show. So you got to get out of this situation, and you got to become a master of your craft, because they've already put you in the box of the minority guy who needs our help and will never achieve it on his own. You got to break free of that. You got to be better at it than them. But those are the things that happen, right? And that's what's going to happen if they give these minimum staffing things. They're going to be writers that you got to hire because it's a requirement, and they're not going to advance, and they're going to not have a good experience. You want people to hire you because they want to hire you, not because there's a gun to their head.
Yeah. So I did bring up this Deadline article, and
Yes.
speaking of residuals and everything, we saw
Yes.
that they had the meeting this past Friday,
Yeah.
and apparently WGA and the AMPTP can't agree to resume negotiations. Okay, so therefore the strike's going to go on indefinitely. Okay, so I'm not going to read this whole article, but I'm just going to skip down to the
Sure.
statement from the WGA negotiating committee. So it says here, and I got to highlight it. As of now, there's no agreement on these items because the AMPTP said they needed to consult with their member studios before moving forward. Our intention after the confidential meeting was to send a simple email to you all, letting you know we would get back to you when there was more specific information about resuming negotiations. However, before the negotiating committee even had a chance to meet, our communications department began hearing from the trades asking for comments on studio leak rumors of the contents of the confidential meeting. This is after the AMPTP spent much of the meeting emphasizing the need for a press blackout. Okay, and then it also talks about how since the studios are leaking out to the press, we need to let you know what was said in the meeting. Now it says here first, Carol Lombardini up here stated that they were willing to increase their offer on a few writer specific TV minimums and willing to talk about AI, but that they are not willing to engage on the preservation of the writer's room or success-based residuals. She did not indicate willingness to address screenwriter issues, Appendix A issues, and many of the other proposals that remain on our lists. And also goes in detail, talks about where it says that we will need to address issues arising from the strike, including healthcare benefit extension and additional plan funding, reinstatement of striking writers, and arbitration of disputes arising during the strike. We will also seek the right for individual WGA members to honor other unions' picket lines as they have honored ours during the strike. Now, Carol's response, Lombardini, her response stated something she repeated 3 times during the meeting, says echoes what was written in the AMPTP press statement yesterday, and this was written out and sent out Friday or
Yes. I
Saturday. I
got that
mean,
email. Yeah. I
yeah,
got
I
that
know.
email. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that you did. And it says people just want to get back to work. So I'm guessing that's what she stated. So I'm pretty sure you read that particular email once, twice, 3 times, lady. I'm going on a tangent. But what exactly are your thoughts about this? Like, how do you feel about this particular? What's your response to this?
Well, my response is that there's been a war of PR, which is what always happens in situations, and it's a stupid war because it just creates more agitation. Before, the one thing that's not mentioned in the clip you just read, but the 24 hours before that, my brilliant Writers Guild leadership, we were all very excited because there was word after 3 months of no talks that the studios were willing to meet on Friday to discuss how to move forward. Right? We've been waiting for that for 3 months. There's been no, and so we're like also excited. People got there. I was on various screenwriters boards. People were talking about, I'm out of my depression now. I have hope. I'm beginning to write stories again for myself, just scripts, spec scripts I'm writing. I'm feeling good about myself. And then on Thursday, just before this missive, on Thursday, out of nowhere, we get this obnoxious email from the Writers Guild leadership saying all these nasty things about the studios and how they're, corrupt and frauds and don't trust them. And we don't expect essentially anything to come out of this meeting. It really is heartbreaking because you took all our hope away, right? Before the meetings happen, you don't want to put something like that out there 24 hours before negotiation, insulting your counterparty like that. But they did because they're trying to keep the young stupid people crowd happy. Who there's all these young stupid people, like I said, these young kids who are Marxist revolutionaries, are out there on the picket line, who basically they're all like, burn the whole system down, don't make any deal ever, burn it all down, and let's start a new Hollywood. It ain't happening, buddy. And it's certainly ain't happening with you, young kid, young picket line. You ain't doing it, right? But those are the people, those are the constituents that voted for our Writers Guild leadership, and so they're like politicians trying to make them happy. So they put that out there, but those aren't working writers. Those are young kids who have maybe got one job 3 years ago and haven't done anything since then, right? They're not working writers like me, who this is my job. And so they're trying to satisfy them, but then they broke our heart. So that was the Thursday night. So on Friday, we're already feeling poisoned by this because our hope was taken away. Our own guild is saying, you can't trust these people. Don't expect anything to come out of this. What a hopeless thing to go into a negotiation with, right? But they do that. And then this thing happens. But I actually want to say something. I want to say that I think that the trades are misrepresenting the trades in general. They serve the studio system, right? That's their propaganda for the studio system. They're not objective newspapers. I mean, one could argue that no newspaper is objective. Every
I agree because when I read the articles and shared about it in my channel before and everything, I've started seeing how, and it's my job to reveal their bias and everything to those who are considered normies out there, and so that way they won't take it as a certain mindset where they're my train of thoughts control. So go ahead, continue.
So the trades are propaganda for the studio. So they're going to, of course, make the Writers Guild look even worse than it is. I mean, I have criticism of the Writers Guild leadership, so I don't think it's that hard to do it, right? But I think in this particular case, especially the article we read Deadline, I don't think it's fairly representing what's really happening. I think what is happening now, I've had a lot of writers who also disagree with the guild leadership like me telling me this from their contacts within the leadership. They're talking to them that no, I mean, it's being presented as the talks collapsed on Friday. That's not really what happened. Both sides in anything, they came in with their maximalist demands. Writers Guild said, we want this, we want demand this, we want 7 writers guaranteed on a show, all that stuff. And the maximalist demand of the studios is like, no, I'm not gonna give any of that, and this is, you take it or leave it, that whatever we gave the directors who reached an agreement a few weeks back, just take that. And so those are just maximalist demand. That's posturing, whatever. But what the end result is that it's not over, as even indicated in the section that you read. The Writers Guild, the Carol Lamborghini, who's the labor lawyer that represents the studios, and she was there in the 2008 strike. She was the number 2 at the time, right? And then when that gentleman passed away later, she replaced him and became the number 1. And she's the primary for the studios to deal with the guilds. And so, she's got all of these major studios who are members of the AMPTP, and they're all very different agendas. Like I said, Apple's agenda is different from Sony's agenda, completely opposite. They have completely different economic models and opposing economic models. So each of them has a different agenda as to what they want. Disney has a different agenda. There's been a claim, I can kind of believe it, that Bob Iger has been enjoying this strike because he gets to shut down a lot of writers deals at Disney that he didn't want to do anymore, and gets to shut down dumb projects at Lucasfilm that they were contractually obligated to move forward, and now they're like, well, it's a force majeure, there's a strike, and so there's studio heads that want the strike to go on until they clean out their books of unproductive deals, right? So you got all these people with agendas that are separate, right? And so she has to go back, Ms. Lamborghini has to go back and then corral all of these opposing they're competitors. They're not allies. They're business competitors. Get them all together and agree on what is the process moving forward. So that's what she's going to do in the next few days. And what has also happened on the Writers Guild side is because of the maximalist position that we push, and because of that angry email that we sent out the day before insulting the studios, a lot of writers became disheartened. A lot of working writers became disheartened. This is not a month into this. This is 3 months into this. In 2008, 3 months, by 90 days, we knew that there was a negotiation to fix this, and by 100 days, there was a deal settled, right? We are now well over 90 days, and there's no negotiation. This is a horrific situation, right? They're not even sitting down. So a lot of writers are like, started, like my friend first posted this message on Twitter, was forced to take it down by pressure from other writers. But they said, look, just if you have concerns, take it up with the leadership. Well, guess what? This weekend, a lot of writers, working writers, showrunners started emailing the leadership saying, enough is enough. We've been quiet this whole time. You need to get your stuff together. We need to act like professionals, and we need to act like professionals who want to solve this. I know your young kids want to fight, want a forever strike, like, communist red guards, the Cultural Revolution, those kids. How did that end for those kids and those 18-year-old kids who were turning the world upside down in China? Eventually, the People's Liberation Army just took them all and just shot them, and that solved the problem, right?
So in other words,
they're like, having to get moving now.
So in other words, from what I'm getting from what you're saying now is that the WGA needs the writers more than y'all need them.
Well, I mean, the reality is the threat that the writers have over our own union, our own guild, is this. So there is a legal thing that the United States Supreme Court created for union labor behavior in the 1960s called financial core, which is, it started off where in the 60s, where basically people said, my union is supporting all these Marxist and communist politicians, and I don't want my money to go to that, but I can't work in this industry without being in a union. So what do I do? So in the 60s, the Supreme Court came up with FI Core, saying you can be a member of a union and then elect to go FI Core, financial core, which means that you will still contribute, your dues to the union, but your earnings, your dues, you don't have to contribute to the politics of it. And as a result, you don't need to be bound by the union's rules. So, if you get, if the union says we're on strike, you're no longer bound to it. For most people, that's, I mean, if you're an auto worker, if there's a strike, well, you alone can't go off and work on an automobile by yourself. So it's not like you're going to go somewhere, right? What are you going to do? You're going to go to Ford and try to build the auto by yourself? No, you can't do it, right? It's different for artists, because artists, like a writer, can go off and work on projects like, like I said, people approaching me with horror films that are not guild members, right? They're approaching, and you can make a small horror movie and not be a guild member. There's a lot of horror movies and other smaller indie films that are made without being members of the guild. Is a huge industry for that, right? You can go off and do things, or even if you are even like I said, I have a project at Major Network. If I were FI Core, I am not. If I were FI Core, then I could just go to my studio and say, yeah, it's a strike, but I'm going to keep working on the scripts for this. You keep paying me, and I'd be free to do so. So the greatest fear the Writers Guild has is that writers will start going financial core, that if they are getting broke, and which is that we're approaching the broke zone. We're approaching 100 days, and people after that, a lot of people they send their kids to school, in a month or so, right? September and whatever. And so how are they going to pay for school? And so they're concerned. And so in order to prevent people from doing that, the Writers Guild has historically tried to intimidate writers from doing it through social pressure. So in 2008, after the day, we were also excited when the strike was over. We signed the agreement. It's over. We're back to work. Then that afternoon, the Writers Guild sent out a very ugly, disturbing email to the entire leadership, listing every one of the writers that went FI Core, who went desperate during the strike. They ran out of money. Mostly, they were soap opera writers whose needs weren't being covered by the strike at all. And the soap operas were they were hiring scab writers to come in and write All My Children, right? So they're like, look, the strike has nothing to do with me. I'm losing my job. I'm going to FI Core out. And they were all listed in an email, and it basically said socially reject them, scarlet letter. I mean, that's how horrible it was. I mean, I'm sure it was probably illegal, but they did it, right? They probably violation of a labor law, but they did it, right? And we were all, even those of us, all of us supported the strike, we were disgusted. Like, what are you doing here? These people left. It was only like 8 or 9 people, but they left because they had to feed their families, and you want to label them like this, like a blacklist. So that's the kind of stuff they do. And they preemptively just did that right now. A month ago, one of the Writers Guild leaders, to threaten people, don't try to go FICOR, put out on Twitter that there's the list of FICOR members, right? There's a page on the Writers Guild website that I never knew existed. It's not, there's no link to it, right? But it's there, which lists all the FICOR members. And they publicize that page. And that was a mistake because you know who's FICOR in the Writers Guild? It's actually very few people, very few people. You'd be surprised. It's only a handful, probably maybe 30, 40 people, right? But you know who's FICOR? The first person who went FICOR? George Lucas. Who went FICOR in 1981.
Really?
George Lucas was the first FICOR in the Writers Guild. He said, screw you guys. I don't want you telling me what I can do. He did that in 1981, the first person. Who followed him? Francis Ford Coppola. Steven Soderbergh. The FICOR is all Oscar winners who said, I don't want to be listening to you morons who are screwing my career up. You know who's went FICOR just back in 2019? The Writers Guild forced us to fire our agents over a dispute we were having with the agencies. I didn't support that action. I still don't support that action, but I went along with it. I lost my agents at the time. I ended up going to another agency, good people, but it was forced upon me, right? This drama, right? That I didn't want. And you know who went FICOR in 2019 because he didn't want to fire his agent? Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone.
That explains a lot, actually.
Yeah,
that explains a lot.
Making Expendables, he didn't want these people telling him you got to fire agents, you can't work in the Expendables right now. And remember, Sylvester Stallone has an Oscar nomination as a writer. He wrote Rocky.
Yep.
He has an Oscar nom as a writer. This guy is an A-list writer, right? Mm-hmm. Oscar-nominated writer. You got John Ridley, who was one of the 2008 batch that was outed, right? Even though he publicly said he went FICOR. What did John Ridley go off to do? John Ridley, he had written Undercover Brother, which I don't know if you've seen, is one of my favorite fun films, right? Undercover Brother, right? He wrote that. But what did he go off to do? He wrote 7 Years a Slave. He won the Oscar for that after. He won the Oscar for that after he had been blacklisted by the Guild for going FICOR. And he's now a top showrunner, making TV shows. He's probably, I actually did a search for his Google search of his net worth, supposedly over $100 million from all of his shows. John Ridley, he made that money after he went FICOR. So they publicized this list, and you're like, dang, that's not you look, everyone who went FICOR is an Oscar winner or really rich. If you want people to be scared of going FICOR, that's not a list you publish. I mean, I don't think any of those guys is worried. I don't think George Lucas is worried about being FICOR or Coppola. Or Soderbergh.
Yeah, and it's I got a lot of thoughts on George Lucas right now. Mainly, I wish he was the head of Lucasfilm right now. He was able to buy it back, kind of like another franchise is done with Disney. That after they bought them, then they decided to go ahead and buy it back. But that's another story for a different day. So, Kamran Pasha, I'm glad to have you by. I'm looking forward to interviewing you again in the near future. As far as not just only WGA strikes, but also a slew of other things. Okay, so it's great to have you by. I'll go ahead and have you in the backstage area so I can finish off this video.
Yeah. Also, if I may, I just want to let people know where they can find me. So if and if you can throw it when you put the video on, please throw a link in, because you're also a member of my Patreon. So Patreon is the best place to find me. We've got a great conversation going on there. I get some scoops of what's happening behind the scenes with some real context I have inside some of these companies, because I'm actually a working writer for 22 years. So I actually know people, not just, claim to know people. Actually, this is the world I live in, but whatever. But I also do a lot of analysis of movies and storytelling and whatever. And it's just my Patreon / my name, Kamran Pasha. So come join me there. And please, thank you for having me on. It was a wonderful time. I hope to come back on your channel in the future.
All right. Glad to hear that. All right. So that's all for this today's stream. Not stream, but video. So if you enjoy what you heard in this video, go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to have any additional thoughts you may have in the comments below. Also, if you have any disagreements with what's stated in the video, go ahead and share those in the comments as well. If you enjoy what was shared in this video, go ahead, smash like button, share far across social media. If you enjoyed all the content I put out there, go ahead, subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification so that way you be notified of future uploads and updates. So then, peace.